Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. So, you have started the game, and you have decided to make the Emperor proud, and you're intrigued by the perspective of eventually making it to the Shimakaze, and you've started down the Japanese torpedo boat destroyer line. Destroyers, by a narrow margin, were second in my recent poll about the hardest to play for beginners class in the early tiers, so tier 3 to 5. Which is why today we are looking at the Isokaze, the tier 4 Japanese destroyer. So, what is that ship all about? Let's have a quick look at the numbers, and it can always help to understand what's the sort of style that you're supposed to play. What do the numbers tell you? What is your ship capable of, and what is it not capable of? We don't have any health, we don't have any armor, but that is a common thing that you find around destroyers. The ship's decently fast and is very, very well maneuverable. She does have 320mm guns, and yes, they exist. But most of the time you will not really be using them because, well, you are planning to play a stealth torpedo boat. It's sort of in the name. You're there to not to be seen and to use your torpedoes, which gets reinforced by the fact that you have 3 twin launchers of torpedoes, which have an okay range of 6.6 kilometers, which combined with, I think it's the best in class surface detection on this thing, actually allows you to be very, very sneaky indeed. So how can you set the ship up? Now, if you've got the blueprints and you actually have installed them, you get the choice between 2 points. You can either get speed and hit points or 3% torpedo tube reload. 3% reload, not an awful lot. You could combine that. You could combine that with the torpedo reload module if it was available, which it isn't because you're still in tier 4. So, what I have done is to go for the speed, because I believe the speed setting here kind of has a nice synergy with the equipment that we can load. You in terms of supplies, now supplies do cost money. I understand that, and especially early game, resources are sometimes scarce. But these are quite useful. This one not so much. So you could skimp on the crew rations. I probably wouldn't on the high grade coal, because that is a consumable that drops your surface detection by 3%, and that in combination with the fact that she already has an extremely good surface detection, plus you can still fit a camo on that further reduces your surface detection, makes that really quite useful for what you're trying to do, which is not be seen and get torpedoes on target. The refined diesel gives you more speed, which is nice, but again, you can sort of do without. So if you're short on silver, then you can get away with not doing that. But if you do, it goes nice with the equipment. Again, if you're short on silver, you honestly can leave the first slot empty. You're not a gunboat. You're not really going to be using your guns an awful lot. I mean, obviously in a pinch, and if you are getting into a dogfight with another destroyer, it's better to have them than not to have them, which is why I went with the main battery mod 1 for slightly better turret traverse. Much more important is the propulsion, because it allows you to take on enemy destroyers more effectively, and the speed. So again, 5% speed here, with all those things, and the supplies only kick in later. With all those things supplied, she does make for, what did I say? Yeah, it was like 37 knots oddly. You do have the engine boost, which further reinforces the idea that this is a stealthy, fast ship that allows you to get into positions where you want to be, or get out of positions where you don't want to be. The other reason, when we're talking about that in a minute, not to fire your guns is because it makes your surface detection much, much worse, because you fired your guns. You're probably not going to be having an awful lot of ship skills just yet, but for a destroyer, it's probably a good one here to have is the preheating, just to get off the ground quicker in the beginning and get into positions where you want to be. Torpedo alert is kind of useful, but the engine overload later on is going to be useful. The mist weaver for the occasional smoke screen. And then obviously things like the Giant Hunter are sort of more the important skills that you want down the road. But for now, we'll assume you have a pretty basic commander because you just started. Now you can pick some of the free camos that are floating around just to give you the XP and silver bonus. And it's probably also, if you're grinding this line, good to flip it in your boosters. Not something I do very much because I don't grind the lines here, but what you generally probably want to do is like load a couple of XP boosters or silver boosters as well if you want, and just to improve the amount of income in both terms of experience and money that you get. Now, you could fit a British flag on it, but it's kind of sacrilegious to do that. This one might even work with max speed, or if you have the money, then you could use the Seaborne Assault, which you can purchase for some silver for a 6-hour period, and it gives you another 3% surface detection, which is nice to have. It's a good all-purpose camouflage if you don't have anything else laying around. It doesn't give you any bonuses in your XP or silver income, but it only costs silver, which once you get into the game a bit more can be more available than say gold, for example. So wouldn't really spend gold for the camos, but if you've got some laying around, you can get some from the fleet shop, for example. There's plenty of options that you have. Anyway, with this whole setup, we actually now have an under 5 kilometer surface detection, which gives us a comfortable 1.6 kilometer margin within which we can fire our torpedoes without being seen. So the two things that you want to be, or the skills that you sort of want to have, you need to know how your concealment works. You need to know that if you fire your guns, your concealment gets a lot worse. And you need to know sort of where to position yourself and how to get into position. So reading the map and knowing where you want to go rather than sailing around aimlessly trying to drop torpedoes on things is a good skill to have. These destroyers don't react very well in getting shot at. All right, let's get into some games, and then we can. I didn't talk about the history of the Isokaze. She did exist, but she didn't really do anything because she was constructed towards the end of the First World War and decommissioned before the beginning of the Second. So it's not an awful lot to mention here. But yeah, you tend to find ships that actually did exist at this kind of tier. All right, let's get into some games. And I'll talk a bit more about sort of how you want to play this kind of destroyer and maybe also why. And here we are, being bottom tier in a base capture game on Aurora. Now, it's not too bad because I think the only tier 5 on the enemy team is a Furutaka. That said, there's no carrier in place. It's a base capture game. There are no capture circles for you to control. It's about, you can take the enemy capture circle if you want, but you get to get through the enemy team first. No carriers, which means that one of your duties here is to scout. There are 2 enemy destroyers, an enemy Wakeful and an enemy Isokaze as well. The enemy Isokaze does not have a camouflage, so you'll probably be able to outspot him, but by a margin. The cruisers obviously being somewhat dangerous, and there is an Italian battleship. Italian battleships load or preload, get into the battle with semi-armor piercing shells. Very dangerous for you. Do not give broadside. Do not get spotted by. Do not get shot at by. Anyway, let's get started. So, given that there is no carrier, one of the things that you can do or you should do for your team is scout and actually figure out where the enemy ships are, because that'll help your ships, the ships on your team, to make better decisions. Now, I do realize this is tier 4, so a lot of people don't make very good decisions because they're very early in the game. But I am a stealthy, fast destroyer. I don't really want to use my guns. I want to use my torpedoes. So I am putting my torpedoes on narrow spread. You can put your torpedoes on wide spread if you're not so certain about, and you want to increase the chances of at least getting 1 or 2 hits on. If you're more certain about your torpedo aim, then putting narrow spreads better, because the chances are higher that you get them all on target, or at least the majority of them. Now I'm rushing straight ahead into the middle here. Why am I doing that? Well, because I'm relatively fast and I should be able to outspot enemy ships. Important information for you is that dotted line around you on the minimap. That is your detection range. Anything that pops up within that detection range will start seeing you. So keep enemy ships outside that circle, like that Kuma over there. We have spotted the Kuma. We could drop some torpedoes on him, but he's probably... No, we've got something else. We've got the Wakeful, and now we're spotted. Now I could start opening up with the Wakeful, just, you know, to have some fun here, and maybe drop some torpedoes on him, but I'm deciding, actually, you know what? Yep, that's why. There's an Italian battleship. Remember what I said about the Italian battleships? There come some torpedoes from the enemy Isokaze. So we have to outrun those. Those two are a bit better aimed, so we will have to make sure that we dodge them as much as possible. And there we go, torpedoes dodged. I have gone undetected, and I've managed to get 2 torpedo hits into that bulk. We haven't done an awful lot yet, but one of the enemy ships, that was probably that Kuma that just rushed straight ahead, has gotten himself killed. Now there's that Wyoming. You'd be tempted to use your guns, but you don't need to. But look at the position that I'm in. One of our ships is sailing around the long edge of the map and is probably useless to the team. The rest of the team is sort of trying to break through the middle. But they don't see me. You see the yellow "you are spotted" indicator is not there. I could use my guns on the Wyoming, but I don't want to, because that means they know that I'm here. And there's the Furutaka and the Dante Alighieri, and these two are dangerous towards me. So instead, I'm dropping some torpedoes on that Wyoming, who decides that he doesn't want to play anymore and is just rushing ahead. And by the time the torpedoes get there, I'm almost reloaded. And I can do this because, again, look at the dotted line. I'm keeping these guys just outside the dotted line here and waiting for my torpedoes to reload. Now you see me mostly firing along the aiming indicator. That's because these ships are sailing in straight lines, and they don't know I'm here. I am now inside the enemy capture circle. I'm not capturing because other ships are there as well. And the Dante Alighieri, only takes 4, but it's because he started turning. I'm not capturing because enemy ships are in here. So they still don't know where I am. I'm sailing around in 5 kilometers distance of these guys, and they have no idea where I am. Now that Wakeful might get an idea relatively soon, and now I'm detected. But again, I'm just using my engine boost, dropping some torpedoes in the general direction of the bulk of the enemy ships. I am going to start firing a bit at the Wakeful, but yeah, immediately there comes and I probably should have used the widespread here. Immediately there comes the fire from the Dante Alighieri, because now they know where I am, and now I need to sail away from this group of ships because I need to stop firing my guns. The problem also that they now obviously have, and once I go undetected, as you see, my dotted line is bigger because I fired my guns, but if you wait a little bit, or you just get outside of range, there, it's shrunk again. It's not too bad because my guns don't have an awful lot of range anyway. And here we go, and now we're doing the same thing. I am behind enemy lines, so if these guys keep shooting at me or keep engaging me, they're not engaging anybody else. If they're engaging everybody else, and I did get too close to the enemy Isokaze there, that I'm being spotted, which means the Dante Alighieri is probably going to turn, because that guy, immediately starts opening up on me while we're sinking another 6 torpedoes into the battleship over there. And yeah, he's firing semi-armor piercing, and there comes the Isokaze. I have to outrun these torpedoes. I can't give broadside to the Dante Alighieri because he can one-shot me. This was only 2 spreads, I think. Yeah, there comes the 3rd spread, and I appear to have taken the 1 torpedo, but this is where your engine, typical wargaming thing, torpedo lag. This is where your engine acceleration comes in useful. And as you can see, the enemy Isokaze has done the same thing. He's literally just stopped and has avoided most of my torpedoes. But again, I can't give broadside to the Dante Alighieri, who's behind me, because he can just delete me with 1 shot. So given that both me and the enemy Isokaze are now in a battle, I have to use my guns, because his torpedoes are reloading faster. The problem that he has is that he's never going to catch me with the torpedoes. And I have managed to gun him down. So don't neglect your guns just because you only have 3 of them, and I said you're a torpedo boat. Yes, you are, but in a pinch, you can always use them. And you've seen I've dropped the third torpedo spread because the Dante Alighieri is in a turn. It's gonna miss because the friendly Isokaze has just been gotten himself deleted by the Dante, but it has taken him out in return, and that is the end of the game. So really the things that you need to be kind of most aware of is where's the danger for you and how not to be seen. That's kind of the key, the key to playing these sort of ships, and to a degree figuring out where your torpedoes need to go, although at these early stages most people do tend to sail in straight lines. Now, destroyers are one of the most powerful classes in early game, and that is because most battleship players haven't learned yet to actually, be even aware of the threat of torpedoes or how to avoid it, which means you tend to deal a lot of damage with torpedoes. That said, there's always a danger, especially from things like light cruisers and other players who know what they're doing. So if you're looking at the enemy team, again, we are bottom tier. It's a largely tier 5 battle. We have a Conte di Cavour, again, Italian battleship, very dangerous, semi-armor piercing shells. Congo, a König, German battleship, good secondaries, also dangerous. And Ishizuchi, not a great threat. Furutaka, Phoenix, yeah. And look at that Clemson. The Clemson is the single most powerful, I think, destroyer at this tier, just from the sheer number of torpedoes that darn thing can spit out. But yeah, so obviously this is going to be a battle between myself and the Clemson to see who can sink how much of the respective enemy teams first. Now let's go. Base capture, Scorching Islands. So again, base capture. You can play capture control in domination maps with these ships as well. You just have to be careful, because if you're up against enemy destroyers, you're at a disadvantage because your guns are not great, and they tend to turn slowly, they reload slowly, and oftentimes enemy destroyers can and will outgun you, and if they catch you, then you're in trouble. Team calls out to capture the enemy base. That's a bit ambitious before the battle has even begun, so let's maybe not make these kind of decisions just yet. For now, we just want to sail around the outside of the flank, because that still allows us to actually go and spot some things, and it'll allow us to catch whoever comes down here. And I do have a battleship following me, so there are some big guns backing me up if I needed to. Now, if we run into the enemy Clemson, there's not an awful lot we probably can do to each other, unless one of us doesn't pay attention and runs into the other's torpedoes. But I am putting yep, now it's a Phoenix. Okay. I have obviously outspotted the Phoenix, so now I need to go in the turn and get away from the Phoenix before he spots me and drop some torpedoes in his direction. So I'm observing with the torpedo indicator where he's going. You see, now he turned one side, now he turns the other side. He is engaging the battleship. He's going to try and get his own torpedoes away. So I'm dropping ahead of the torpedo indicator because he's in a turn. And I'm expecting him to complete the turn. That's why I didn't drop far ahead of him. And since I just got myself spotted, I might as well use the guns. But the Phoenix is a very maneuverable ship, so I'm not having great hopes to actually catching him with the torpedoes. But I might get 1 or 2 on target, and that would actually be quite lovely. And yeah, 2. I would have needed, I think, 4 to sink him. But he's now on sufficiently low hit points, and I'm going to try and keep him spotted for the friendly König to have something to shoot at. Piotr Velicki there on our team is just sailing straight ahead into the enemy, so he's probably going to get Clemson, depending on where the Clemson is. There is an enemy König, so I'm again unspotted, and the friendly battleship has taken out the Phoenix, because I've kept the Phoenix spotted. And he was on low hit points, and that's what battleships are for, sinking light cruisers. So, utilize your team. There's the Clemson. Hello, Mr. Clemson. Oh, yeah. It's on, isn't it? Okay. I am now doing something that's called a rush. I am detected, but I'm banking on the fact that this guy's not paying attention, because he is engaging the rest of my team. So neither the Furataka, well, the Clemson seems to be paying attention, but he seems to be more interested in farming the battleships on my team. So I'm just brazenly sailing next to the König. Yes, it is a German battleship. Yes, it is dangerous, but he's paying no attention whatsoever. So I'm just going to drop some torpedoes into him. And the Clemson is now engaging me. So Clemson and me might get ourselves into a little gun duel. If the König was paying any kind of attention, I would have been in deep trouble here. Now he is, but now it's too late because now I'm sailing away from him. And now I've got the Furataka, the Clemson, and the König shooting at me, which means I need to make myself scarce. And I might as well use my guns because I am within detection range of everybody. I'm trying to set a fire on the König to finish him off. But the Clemson really is now insistent on coming after me. And yeah, I'm not going to beat the Clemson in a gun duel or König in that regard. I might as well stop and see if I can... I'll just drop some torpedoes in his general direction. I don't have high hopes that he's actually going to run into those. Because, yeah, obviously he knows that I just dropped torpedoes because I stopped firing my guns. And is easily avoiding them, but maybe we'll hit something else in return. But he is probably trying to get torpedoes away again as well now, and he knows that I'm no threat to him because I just fired my torpedoes. I only have 3 guns, and he sees the friendly König, which is a much juicier target. So he's doing the same thing, and he just drops all his torpedoes into the friendly König, who is going to put some damage on, but hasn't been timing things right. It's as if he had switched his main guns to high explosive and had everything ready by the time that thing was passing by brazenly broadside. It was a high-risk rush, but has done some damage. And yeah, I actually have no chance to actually dealing with this thing due to the fact that I am a torpedo boat. So we're 10 points behind, 2 kills each. Friendly König probably not in a good shape, but keeps engaging the Clemson. So now it's coming down to who can kill the battleship more quickly. Okay, Clemson has taken out the König. Well done, Clemson. He's probably got his torpedoes on the other side away because that thing has a lot of torpedoes. Observing the Congo where he's going. Congo's looking at me. Ow! But he didn't have the high explosive loaded. And there's a low health König. Maybe I can set a fire, but I can do some damage to the Congo. And he has been accelerating weirdly. Not sure what happened there, but maybe he was on slow speed, so only half my torpedoes have hit. And we're still 1 ship behind, and I need to play a bit more risky at this point. Ow, yeah. But as you can see, if you do that, you very, very quickly lose your hit points, and it can get very close very quickly. So I'm now undetected, which means that now given that things you can't see don't exist, the enemy team will... This works like, guards in fantasy RPGs. And we were going to try and kill the König there. Guards, after you haven't been seen for a minute or so, they suddenly completely forget about the corpse next to them. And it's like, oh, it must have been nothing, or must have been the wind or something. So let's see if we can catch some on the König and maybe some of the Congo behind him. But that should take out the König. Yep, König's dead. And maybe we can still sink some into the Congo. And the Isokaze, and the Clemson is battling our battleships over there. But we're now 2 kills ahead, even though I haven't managed to sink the Congo. And we win by... but the enemy Clemson takes the MVP still. Yes, you've done more damage, but I've sunk more ships. Well played, anyway. But that just goes to show you how powerful destroyers are in this kind of scenario, because battleships on your team in these tiers just don't have the situational awareness of how to deal with destroyers, and you have a very, very small window. If a destroyer is coming at you, you've got a very small window in which to react. So unless you've got people who are really, really paying attention and probably have been sunk by destroyers quite a bit, mostly battleships are not the most attentive players at this tier as yet, and which means that they are targets for your torpedoes, which means you can rack up stupid amounts of damage in these lower tiers for the kind of ship that you're playing at, like you've seen just with the Clemson there. That would have been a good result for a tier 10 game. So, yep. So yes, destroyers. If you're deciding to play torpedo destroyers, and to a degree, the second round was in a bit in a style of being a little bit more open about it. Just keep maneuvering. Don't sit still broadside onto things. Be aware of what things are shooting at you, what things are not paying attention to you. And you can also, like I showed in the first game, just not be seen and get in torpedoes at enemies. You will need to learn how to, especially if you're firing torpedoes at things that are not battleships, you will need to learn how to sort of predict their movements a little bit. And then you'll get a. So don't always just fire down the aiming indicator, but try to learn where ships are going and how torpedoes work. You have to lead torpedoes the same way that you have to lead shells, and the aiming indicator is just a hint, but it's not a guarantee that if you aim down that indicator that you'll actually hit. So that's that. Anyway, next up, I'll probably do the inverse and play a battleship and see how that goes in lower tiers. Anyway, that's it for me today. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.